Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next part in me and No Huddle NFL or Patrick Cypher's preseason power rankings, where we're going to be going over the 28th ranked team on our rankings, that being the Tennessee Titans, a team that we all thought was going complete rebuild after the loss of Mike Vrabel, one of the best head coaches in football. But instead, they made some moves that didn't quite signify that. They made some moves that maybe a team that wants to try and win right now would make, a team that wants to compete right now. Just a overall very intriguing team, made some intriguing draft picks, has one of the more intriguing quarterback situations in the league. But we're just going to get right into it. First of all, how are you doing today, Pat?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just great, actually. We got a couple of these recordings to go today. This is going to be the first of the four we're doing today, so that's
Mm-hmm.
exciting. But I just want to say with the Titans, you said it yourself. We thought this team was going to be building to compete or building to rebuild, but now here they are building to compete, which is
Yeah.
hilarious because where do we have them ranked, right? Not
Near
overly
the bottom.
high. So clearly, we don't think they did a very good job, and it seems like that's the general opinion. So maybe they probably should have went that rebuild type of route. Okay, maybe they should have. But let's jump into this with the head coach slash culture section really quick because I think it is a very interesting situation we have going on here, right? New head coach and Brian Callahan. The last guy, Mike Vrabel, got fired. A lot of people think unfairly. Now, it was because he had some feuds with other people in the organization. Me personally, as someone outside of the organization, I would have leaned more towards Vrabel's side of it,
Absolutely.
but that's besides the point. Clearly, the Tennessee Titans organization felt very differently. Tell me, how do you feel about Brian Callahan and that switch at the head coach spot?
Well, I do think it's a downgrade overall. I think anybody, for the most part, would have been a downgrade for Mike Vrabel. I thought he was one of the 10 best coaches that we had in this league. But I do like Brian Callahan a decent amount. I think he was a big part of that Bengals offense that they have going on over there, and very different from I think every team we've covered so far, for the most part, has been more that West Coast
Mm-hmm.
Shanahan's style of
Yeah.
offense. This is much more of a spread offense. They're gonna,
Mm-hmm.
that's the type of offense they want to run. I thought there's a point in, I believe it was the 2022 season, where that Bengals offense, I think for the first 5 weeks was not looking very good, and they were still trying to run that West Coast McVay style of system,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like, okay, well, we have to change things up, and but that was mostly for on like credit to Brian Callahan, because
Mm-hmm.
they went spread, and that was where his coaching tree kind of led him to. That was his
Mm-hmm.
expertise, and from then on, we saw that Bengals offense really take off. So I like him as an offensive minded head coach. I don't know a whole lot about him as a culture guy, so
Yeah.
I can't say that he definitely
The
isn't going to bring the
the
Vrabel
good thing,
culture.
the good thing here, he has been a part of a rebuild in the past. Okay,
Okay.
with
Yeah.
Cincinnati, it was a successful rebuild. So
Right.
we know that he knows a little something about how to properly build a young football team.
Hmm.
So that's the good thing there. That is definitely a positive thing. That's one of the things I like more about the hiring. However, their approach has been so different from that of the Bengals.
Yes.
So
Yes, it
different.
has.
So it leaves me in this spot where it's like, did he really learn from that? It's a really weird situation there.
And
And
above
I
all else,
imagine there's a lot of people that probably in that locker room, not to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
they probably wanted Vrabel to stick around.
That's the thing I was going to lead into as well, is Mike Vrabel was one of the best culture head coaches in the league. So yeah, you have a bunch of people, bunch of players that probably still wanted him in the building, now trying to lean into this new culture brought in by Brian Callahan, who, younger head coach. It's going to be. I'm curious to see how that translates. Is this a team that's going to buy in? Is this a team that's still like, where'd our guy Mike Vrabel go? We'll have to see.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting to see what happens from a culture standpoint here
Hmm.
because, like we said, this should be a rebuilding team, but they're trying to compete. How does that normally work out? Well, that normally works out in a team setting their expectations too high, underperforming, and it not looking very good. But a good head coach can kind of keep the locker room together despite that.
Yep.
We'll see if that happens here. It's very interesting to see. But for now, let's just move over to that offensive scheme, which you already kind of touched on. Brian Callahan, how do you think he's going to touch on that offense?
It's going to be that spread style of offense that we see the Bengals like to run. You're going to see a lot of empty. You're going to see a lot of 2x2. Like that's just it's very different from what we see around the league nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Around the league, teams love to run that, even if it's not under center, out of shotgun, West Coast style of offense. And this is just almost entirely spread. Like that's just, well, at least that's what they did with the Bengals. You're not going to see a lot of that anymore unless he changes his mind. Like he completely changes the scheme that he wanted to run in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And then you bring over the offensive coordinator, Nick Holes, who Peterson disciple, came over from Jacksonville. Again, more of that spread style of offense. Like
Mm-hmm.
this seems to be the type of offense that they want to run.
But you mentioned how they might have to make changes. I completely agree. They're going to have to make changes. Because this personnel, even though they made their fair share of changes because, Calvin Ridley was on the market, they wanted to bring in veterans that could help them compete. They don't have a Joe Burrow. That's for sure. They definitely don't have a Jamar Chase, and they don't have a T. Higgins either. Okay, they have a Tyler Boyd, but the point is their route concepts that they used in Cincinnati, that Callahan used in Cincinnati, were very, very, very simplistic. The offense was extremely designed to cater towards guys like Burrow, like Jamar Chase. The route concepts were simplistic. Okay? It was beat your man. You could do it because you're a freak of nature. Now you're going to have to scheme guys open. You're going to have to put some creative stuff together. I don't know. I'm not saying he can't, but I don't know if Callahan is capable of designing an offense like that. We're just yet to see it. It's not really a knock on him necessarily, but it is a knock if he fails to adapt, and that's a big question for them.
Absolutely. And that I think that we can lead into maybe the head. I don't know if the headliner is the word, but the most intriguing part of this entire team, that being the quarterback, and that being Will Levis, second-year player, Kentucky's top of the second-round pick last year, a player, not me included, I thought was going in the top 15 picks of that draft. I personally was very high on Will Levis. I loved him coming out, and he fell down. Tannehill isn't up to par. We see Levis come in. He shows some fantastic flashes while also showing some low valleys. Like it was that kind of rookie season for Will Levis. And I would say this is kind of his rookie season at this point. A full season coming in.
Yeah. Okay,
New
sure, I get
playbook,
that argument.
you know what I mean?
At first, I
So,
was kind of like, he got out there, he got to do his thing, but I understand what you're saying. This is his first time actually understanding what he's doing, and because it's a new scheme, it might as well be his rookie year.
yes. So, but is he a fit for this scheme? Can he fix some of the things he's not great at? We're going to have to see. But there's one thing he is great at, and that is that dude has a rocket launcher attached to his right shoulder. That guy has one of the stronger arms in the league. He is just crazy. I mean, crazy isn't even a word to describe it. He had some absurd throws last year. Again, absurdly high highs.
Yeah.
But a lot of lows. A lot of lows as well.
He threw some risky balls throughout the season. He was not afraid to just cock it and launch it. No jokes about it, no second thought. He was just throwing it up there. That's why he loved a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, right? And we're going to get into that receiver core more, but I do want to look at the other quarterbacks in this room because I think we might have a little bit of a quarterback competition. Will Levis is obviously the front runner, but Mason Rudolph finished the season pretty well. Quietly, he did a good job at the end of the season when he got the opportunity to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then Malik Willis, he was someone who, much like you said, has the rocket right arm, right? He has those physical traits that you desire in a quarterback. It's a lot of the mental stuff, but now he's had some time to develop. Does he have that stuff down? If he does, he could definitely give Levis a run for his money. This is not a walk-in and Levis gets the start type of job. There is going to be a little bit of a competition, I think.
I disagree. I think this is Levis's job, if without a doubt.
I
This I
think he's
don't
the front runner. You feel 100% certain that he's going to be the starter for
100%,
the entire season.
100%.
You're telling me if they fail to
Well, like
succeed
if he stinks, like yeah, of course they're gonna bench him. But
yeah, well,
like if even if he's
I
average, he'll start the whole season.
I don't
Absolutely.
think so. I think if they have a
I
losing
think this.
record at
I
week,
think.
if it's week 10 and they have 3 wins and they need a
Well,
spark, I think they're very willing.
I would call that being really bad. Like
Well, even if it's
stinking.
not on Levis, like Levis is putting together a fine
Oh,
season.
even then, like I think if he's putting a fine season, they're gonna keep him out there. I think this
I don't
whole
think so.
season
I
is
think this is the type of team where if they feel like the team needs a spark, they're gonna make the QB change because I don't think Levis, personally, maybe me and you have a difference in terms of how we look at Levis, but personally I look at it and I say Levis isn't this clear starter. Okay? Their big question mark is the quarterback position. Levis is the front runner, but they have other guys that could come in. Like there isn't some huge gap here.
well,
I
it's
don't
it's
think.
not only well, that's the thing. I don't think Levis is like he's like 29th, 28th ranked quarterback in the league for me probably. If I were around that range, I don't have the actual ranking, but
Mhm.
like Rudolph is basic backup quarterback to me. Like I
Yeah,
sure that's all he is, and I didn't like Malik Willis coming out. I don't think I
but
don't think there's really a world Malik Willis is anything but a backup quarterback.
for me,
So
I
that
always looked at Malik Willis. I remember, and part of it was him coming into the league with a group of quarterbacks that weren't overly strong.
yeah.
But I remember looking at Malik Willis and I was like, man, if there's one guy from this class to be this overwhelming stud, it's going to be him. Because he has those traits. It's just literally everything mental. It's
Hmm.
everything mental. But now he's had some time. We don't know what Malik Willis is right now. He might still be the guy we saw coming out of Liberty who wasn't very good. Or he could have made a couple steps and a team like Tennessee that only has 3 wins 10 games into the season might make that change. That wouldn't surprise me.
Again, I think the narrative for this entire season is Will Levis our guy. I think that's the whole narrative, and if he's not, they're just going to draft a quarterback next year. That's
Mm-hmm.
I think the Titans' entire plan.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think that's clearly what their plan is, evaluate their young
And
quarterback.
again, I agree with you in the sense of like if he's clearly just like not fitting the system, he's not playing well. Yeah, I could totally see him turning to
Mm-hmm.
Malik Willis, see what they got there.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to take him playing some pretty rough football for that to happen, personally.
And I think that part of the reason that we're saying that this is a evaluate Will Levis year is because of the weapons they brought in. I want to talk about those a little bit now. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, this is a cast of weapons that isn't too bad. They invested a lot of money into it. I don't think they got quite what they desired in terms, or you look at what they gave up in order to get these guys, and you would think it's a better group. But I'm not going to act like it's a bad group. How do you feel about this receiver core?
I usually think it's one of it's a top half receiver core. I'm not. It's probably
I'd
like
put it around there,
16, probably like
maybe.
16 out of 32.
Well, I'm saying overall, not just the receiver core. I'm saying the running backs too. Like
Yeah, no,
they,
that's a good receiving group of running backs as well. Pollard's a
uh,
good receiving back.
no, but I'm just saying overall weapons.
Oh, weapon again, like I think it's very standard. I think it's very middle of the pack.
Yeah, but
It's
I
very.
think they gave up so much. You would expect a better
Oh,
return.
totally. Like they
Like
had to pay
that's
a
kind of
tax
how I
for
feel.
being a bad team with a new head coach.
Oh, and
Yeah, they had to pay a
and it
tax.
showed. Is my
Yeah,
point.
it
The
showed.
Calvin Ridley contract is, of course, the elephant.
It's
in the room.
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous for the receiver that had one of the highest drop rates in the NFL. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of money. That's a
A
lot of
ton
money. For
But I will say, in this offense, at least now he gets to play it two, and I think he's much better suited to play a 2 role because Hopkins, in my opinion, is still very much a 1. I think he's still very much
you
the
do
number
think
1
that.
receiver, 100%. I think he is
What's
still
what's the thought process there? Because of course the hands he catches everything,
hands are still some of the best.
catches
hands in the
everything.
league.
He's
He's
still a
very-
good contested catcher, but
Yeah,
he can't separate and he can't do much after the catch anymore.
But here's the thing, yeah, that's the biggest part is he's not what he used to be after the catch. But separation was never a big part of DeAndre Hopkins' game anyway.
But he was able to separate enough.
enough, but he's still like, if he's the guy you want to, again, fantastic hands. He's a very nuanced route runner. He understands how to run routes to a very high
Yeah,
degree.
well,
Like, it's just about,
he's almost like what Keenan Allen is, but
yes,
worse.
yes.
And I don't know if he's quite a wide receiver one caliber of that.
I think he's still a one.
You
I think
okay?
he's still a one.
Me and you differentiate on that. Me personally, I don't think he has the
No, he's a
wide receiver
low end
one.
one. I think he's a
Yeah,
low end one.
I don't even think that, but okay.
I do think he's still
Personally, I am leaning more towards Calvin Ridley being the one there.
I don't think that's that, and I don't think that's happening. I think he's the two in this offense. They're like I think I like Hopkins a lot. I watched for one, I liked I watched the Levis tape, of course.
Yeah.
Like, just Hopkins looked great. Hopkins looked really good. It, like didn't look like his age. I'll tell you that.
Sure, okay. Listen. I'm not saying Calvin Ridley's or DeAndre Hopkins or some like bench warmer. I'm not acting like that.
Of course.
But I look at this receiver core. I don't see an established one. I don't, or like a current one in today's league. But I do see one guy that can emerge as a one, and that is Calvin Ridley. Because if Calvin Ridley fixes the hands up, he still is a really good route runner. I still do think he is very good at separating.
Yes.
It's just the drops. Like, that's the main thing. The drops. It's bad. Like, that's my main issue with him. Mm-hmm. And that is a very fixable thing in the NFL. Very fixable thing. And meanwhile, DeAndre Hopkins, he plays kind of a niche role. Not niche. There's a big role for it. But I struggle to say, like, oh, yeah, it's third down. We need to convert here. DeAndre Hopkins, we're giving you a slant. Get open. Right? I see him as we want a big play. Shuck it up to DeAndre Hopkins. I see him as that. But personally, I think he's more of like the occasional big play guy that will also settle in weak spots of zones occasionally and make those plays. But that's about it now.
I think that's where you and I differ a bit there for sure. So I think he is the one in this offense right now. And again, if Calvin Ridley can pick up the drops, absolutely. But if Calvin Ridley's, again, he had the opportunity to be a one with the Falcons. He didn't fill into that role.
I disagree. I think Calvin Ridley with the Falcons did a good job.
Well, he was good when Julio was on the team.
I'm saying when he was a one, when Julio was gone.
Yeah, no, I disagree. I think the stats and what he did say otherwise. I remember before Calvin Ridley got the suspension, he was one of the best route runners in the NFL. He was a very, very exceptional. Oh, he was a great route runner, but he wasn't going up over people when he needed to make the catches. He had drop issues with the Falcons as well.
I remember watching Calvin Ridley's film back when Julio Jones was gone. I thought what he did was as a separator. Like, that's my thing. I like route running receivers.
Right.
He does a very good job as a route runner.
Fantastic route runner. Fantastic.
And with me, I think there's a lot more could do with a reliable route runner than a reliable jump ball guy.
I think that's fine, but I think that's where you and I opinions on Hopkins differ. I thought on film last year he was still very much a reliable route runner. Like, he is very nuanced. He knows how to settle in zones. He knows how to, he is very nuanced with his route running. He may not have the speed he once did, but very nuanced.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not doubting he's nuanced. He always has been, right? So, of course, that hasn't changed. However, I look at what Calvin Ridley provides. As a route runner, I just think there's a lot more you could do with that. DeAndre Hopkins, again, I think he plays more of that Keenan Allen role, where he does something, and he does it well, as a possession guy who can get that little bit of separation, and then you can hit him with the tight throws. But how much can that really do for you if that's your go-to guy? I really like that as a complimentary guy, and I think that's the big reality here that I'm noticing the more we talk about it. They have a really good route runner. They have a really good possession guy. That's always a good mix. It doesn't matter who's the one who, the point is that's a good combination, right? And then you add a really good slot with it. I still think Tyler Boyd is a really good slot, even today.
Again, we disagree a little bit there as well. I thought he was kind of underwhelming last year.
Well, he's obviously not the Tyler Boyd of old.
Tyler Boyd of old, but
yeah.
But he does have he is going to start in this team. He has a role in this team because he knows the system. He gets brought over to Brian Callahan's system. He's also a really, really good locker room guy. Always has been a leader. And I would say Hopkins and Ridley aren't known for being leaders or locker room guys, going to teach the younger guys around them.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I think there's a planet where, like, if Kyle Phillips stays healthy, he kind of takes over that slot role at some point this season because he was really good when he.
I agree. I was excited to get into the depth because I was big on Phillips too.
Yes.
But I look at it, Boyd will be this weak spot of zone settler, right?
Mm-hmm.
He'll settle where he needs to settle. For me, that's what in a across the middle target, whether that's a tight end or a slot receiver, that's what I want to see.
Yep.
Then you'll have DeAndre Hopkins as this possession guy, and Calvin Ridley as this route runner, separator. That is like all you need, man. That's all you need. Yeah. How high caliber of a job can each of those guys do? That's kind of my question.
And I think that's a very valid question. Is I think you're maybe looking at more low end of like sure, I think Hopkins is a 1. I think he's a very low end 1 at this point in his career. Calvin Ridley's a 2. Unless he fixes those drop issues, he's a very low end 2 at this point in his career. Tyler Boyd can still play, is going to be a good fit in this offense. One of the lower end slot receivers, I would say. Mm-hmm. So, like, how high is the ceiling of these weapons? Not too high.
And that's where it's on. I know we mentioned Callahan earlier. That's where it's on him to really elevate them. He doesn't have a Jamar Chase. He doesn't have a T. Higgins. Nope. Okay? And he doesn't have the old Tyler Boyd. This is going to be really different, and this is the most it's going to be on him to elevate the team.
Right. And, there are some interesting names in the back. Before we touch on probably the more interesting one, I do want to talk about Nick Westbrook-Akine because he's just like a super solid wide receiver to have on your team as a depth piece. Great blocker. He actually had a bunch of like clutch catches last year for some reason whenever they put him in. Just like a really just solid receiver to have on the back. Good possession guy. You're not mad at it. And then there's Treylon Burks. First round pick, meant to take over for A.J. Brown. Has not happened yet. Has had his fair share of, he's had drop issues. He's had injury concerns, injury issues, but also had some flashes when he is healthy. Mm-hmm. I loved him coming out of college. It's unfortunate. I did. I really liked him coming out of college.
You really like the possession guys, huh?
I do. I like certain guys like that. Yeah. But he was another archetype for him was he was really good after the catch.
So I was going to say, he is... So many people compared him to A.J. Brown, which was made that so funny to me. Mm-hmm. Because he's what happens when you take the, like, clear and obvious highlight traits of A.J. Brown, but only those, and make them into a receiver. The yak ability and the possession ability, catching through contact, that stuff. He's very good at that stuff. Nowhere near the route runner that A.J. Brown is. Nowhere near it. And I think the route tree is just so limited. And I think that's the main reason he's just a depth guy. Because you put him out there, you're either giving him a screen, or you're going to have him just go vertical. Only 2 things he could do. That's all. And that just forces him into a depth role. Because he isn't quite good enough to just be like, every down, you know what I'm going to do, I know what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to beat you. Like, he's not good enough to be at that level, and because of that, he's just a depth guy.
And I agree, and I do want to point out, too, these had some games of just like, I am better than you, going vertical in those situations.
Exactly.
So I'd love to see how Callahan uses him, because when you think back to Callahan's offense, and I'm not saying it's Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or anything, I'm just saying, like, they do a lot of that. They do a lot of, we're just going to go vertical. So I'd love to see how he's a fit. I think he's much more of a depth piece. But the last guy I want to touch on is Jaquan Jackson, rookie out of Tulane. He was actually a really late round draft crush of mine. I was like, if somebody picks up this guy in the 6th round, you might have a contributor on a football team. He is that slot-based wide receiver. He's really fast, really nice route runner. He was cooking people at the Senior Bowl. Just somebody to keep an eye on. I think he's good. But let's move to these running backs now. We had talked about him a little earlier, but an interesting room of 2 very similar backs in Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. I loved Tajay Spears coming out of college. Mm-hmm. I thought he showed some great flashes last year. And then they bring in Pollard, who fantastic. As that like second piece rotational guy, he was fantastic. And then he gets that full-time starting role with the Cowboys this season. Clear downgrade in production, clear downgrade in efficiency. Uh, but now he gets brought into a system, a role where he is going to, this is going to be a true 50-50 split in my eyes. Like it might be a like one drive we're doing Tajay, the next one we're doing Pollard, and we're going to keep switching off. Like
yet he's getting paid like he's one of the top backs in football.
Exactly. And that's
Which,
where the
again,
issue comes in.
It's okay, the Titans are a worse team with a new head coach, so they're gonna have to pay more. I get it. You have Tajay. You don't need to pay a back, especially a top end back. You really don't. It was, for me, that is flawed process, especially when that running back is clearly not the same after his injury in the playoffs. Clearly not the same. And Tajay and him played the same exact role. Tajay is just the better back.
And this is where I come in. Like, I think the contract is crazy. But we got to remember what the issue with Tajay was coming out of college, and that was he doesn't have an ACL. Like, it's gone. And people have basically said, you're gonna play he's playing his rookie contract, and after that he's probably not playing anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think hypothetically, let's say Tony Pollard got an average contract, like not some crazy top running back contract, got a regular contract. And then you've got two players that play the same role. I think there is some value in, hey, we can take our guy off the field when we need to, when we feel that he's gassed or he just breaks off a 60-yard run. He's gassed. We can put in Tony Pollard. We don't have to change up the offense because he's in there. They play the same role. And you can also take some of that. Do you want Tajay playing a full-time, like that's your running back role with what he has in his knee? You know what I mean?
No, but that doesn't mean you pay Tony Pollard.
That's what I'm saying. I think the contract's crazy, but I don't think the process in bringing in a running back who has the same skill set is flawed. I think that.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Does it have to be the same exact type of skill set? I feel like you could have brought in a little bit of a heavier guy, because now you drafted a running back just a year ago, and you're paying a running back big money, yet I still don't feel overly confident in terms of ball carriers and short yardage situations. Like, you would like to bring in more, and I know it's a scheme thing, but you would like to bring in more of a mixture of it. In my mind.
I can agree with that. But if you want to go into a power set, I don't think Hassan Haskins is a superstar, or Julius Chestnut, who might take that power back role. But like, if you just want a guy who's going to be on the goal line, getting some extra yardage, there's some big dudes that are going to come in, and like that was Hassan Haskins' role back in Michigan.
But my point is, if you're gonna invest, I want you to not just check that box a little bit. I want you to check every box. If you're gonna invest in a running back, I want that investment to lead to me saying, oh, they have a guy for short yardage situations. And then they also have a guy who could do it as a receiving back. And they have a good blocking running back. Like, they don't. They just have two guys that have
I'm not
the
saying
same
they do.
exact
I'm not saying they do. I think that's fine. I think that's perfectly fine to have like that type. And in this scheme, they're not doing that. They're not going under center and running the football. That's just not something they're going to do.
Yeah, you're right. I understand that.
They're going to line up both these guys as receivers. They'll put them at wideouts. Like that's the type of thing they're going to do.
But personally, for me, it's just, again, it's clearly a difference between how both of us see the game, right? And by the way, I just want to say, this one episode, we've had more differies ideologically. We've had more differences ideologically. From an
ideological standpoint.
Thank you. From that perspective, we've had more differences in this one episode than we did in the other four. But that's besides the point. For me, I just look at it, if you're gonna invest, I want you to invest in a way that allows you to become more versatile in terms of what you could do in that position. And they aren't. And I just don't like Pollard as a running back at this moment.
Sure. I think he's going to be better as a part of a two-headed dragon that they want to do. But
I get what makes you say that, because that was the case when he was most successful. But I just don't think he's the same guy after the injury. I think it's
And
as
that could be
simple
the
as that.
case. And something we can't agree on. I think they totally overpaid for Pollard. I wouldn't have paid Pollard that
Mm-hmm.
much money at all.
Yeah.
My hypothetical was more like if they paid him average money, I don't think the mindset is flawed in trying to bring in a guy who isn't like a Tajay Spears. Who,
Mm-hmm.
again, I don't think you want Tajay Spears as your top back because
No.
you have a limited time on him. You kind
Or
of
you
want to
have him
save
as
that.
the top back in like a constant rotation.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. It's top
Yeah.
back, constant rotation type
He's
guy.
definitely not a bell cow. Like, we completely agree on that. And that's part of the reason why they made this signing. I'm just worried because of how much they paid him, they're going to feel inclined to give him an not nearly, but like a 70%, 75%
And if they do that, I
with
think that'd
Pollard.
be
I'm
if
saying.
they do that, that's where I'm like that's bad. I
Yeah.
think this is going to be a lot more of a 50-50 split. Like
It should
literally,
be.
it should
It
be.
should be.
If they don't do that, then I'm more like, yeah,
Yeah.
then why'd you bring that in? Either way, those are the running backs. We kind of touched on like there are power backs in the back. They're not great, but
Mm-hmm.
Hassan Haskins, that was his role at Michigan. He was a touchdown vulture. They just put him in
Mm-hmm.
on the goal line, and
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen. Julius Chestnut actually showed some good things in the preseason last year, but didn't get a ton of play time. But that's the running back room. And now let's move to the tight ends. And starting with Chigakonkwo, I was super excited to watch him after his rookie season. Very excited. He was so exciting. And then this last year, just not the same player. Yeah, drop issues. I
Still
think
the
he can
same athlete, though.
still the same athlete,
And
and that's
that's
why.
what makes people optimistic about him. And
Yes,
that's
and
why I still am.
I'm
Yeah.
optimistic as well.
Mm-hmm.
He is still the same athlete, and I'm excited to see him in this spread style of offense. I think he's a very, we talk about they don't have the Jamar Chases, they don't have the T Higgins, of course, but they do have something that they didn't have in Cincinnati, and that's a potentially really athletic, really good tight end in Chick. And I'm excited to see how Callahan uses that in this spread style of offense.
Yeah. No, that should be really fun. Really fun. I'm hoping we see Chigakonkwo, design him some bubble screens, right? Get the man the ball in space, Chig, and then take advantage of him as a route runner because he runs routes well too as a tight end. And it's
Very good.
very clear. Like, you look at the tight end that they brought in just last year in Josh Wiley, right? That's another guy who, good route runner, right? Someone from the tight end position that will get open, using some footwork, and he has that finesse. Chig, was just the problems at the catch point partially. I also think it was a little bit of a lack of, like, physicality. I think he was a little bit less willing to kind of just, go the extra mile, beat out linebackers at the catch point. I think that was part of it. But even if he doesn't fix that up, I do think they're going to generate opportunities for Chig
Yes.
on the perimeter.
Absolutely. And you bring up Josh Wiley, and I didn't love him coming out of college last year, but I actually was pretty pleased about what I saw on tape as a rookie. Nothing spectacular, but if he's your tight end too, you're feeling pretty good, especially if he's going to keep developing. As you said, good route runner. Nick Vanette's standard tight end 3. And
he's more their traditional type of guy.
Yes, in line, yeah. And are we going to see a lot of that in this offense? Probably not. But I think they've got 2 tight ends that fit this spread style of offense pretty damn well.
Yeah. Not going to be a fullback team, but if they were to line up an H-back, they did this a little bit last year, Chig would normally be the guy to play that role. I don't know how much we're going to see that in a Brian Callahan offense, but if they were, they have that versatility if needed.
And something I have been thinking about is I don't know how much maybe we'll see a double back kind of a backfield in the back with Pollard.
They did that with, I know it was a different offensive coordinator, it was Tim Kelly instead, but they did that a lot with Tajay and Derrick Henry. I don't think it worked overly well, but that's also because Derrick Henry in a shotgun formation just isn't a recipe for success at all.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, we'll see. It should be interesting. I think they definitely could entertain the idea of 2 back, but it doesn't matter if they can't get it done on the offensive line. So let's talk a little bit about that.
And we'll talk about with, usually the most important part of an offensive line, their rookie first round pick this year, J.C. Latham. I don't know how you felt about Latham coming out. I thought it was a bit of a, so I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here. I thought it was a reach. I had Latham as my tackle 5. I saw it with him. I thought maybe I don't know, just not as explosive or as much of a people mover as you'd expect a guy his size to be on tape. That's not what I thought. I thought like I had my concerns, but when you're handpicked by by Bill Callahan, um, what do I know, right? Like this is one of the best offensive line coaches in football. If he's your guy, I think I'm inclined to believe in what Bill Callahan is saying and picking, and he is right until proven otherwise. Like that, he's just that kind of like he has a type for say
Yeah, and
Alabama tackle
you
Jedrick
know
Willis
what?
Browns.
I kind of hate guys like Bill Callahan because they're just, as someone that tries to, go out there with my personal opinion based on the film that I watch, it's just like, no, I can't say anything.
Exactly,
It's
that's the
really
problem.
frustrating, guys like him. But yeah,
Like
no,
I,
you're right. Like, yeah, Bill Callahan does a good job. So I still didn't love Latham
I
either.
don't
I'm
either.
with you.
I
I
don't.
don't think
Yeah,
he's bad,
yeah.
but I thought in this act of a draft class, he was kind of the odd man out at tackle. Uh,
Yes, I loved Mims was I was really high on. I loved Demarius Mims.
mhm,
Fashanu was there.
yeah.
Fontenot was still good. I wasn't as high on Fuaga, but either.
Oh yeah, I was a little bit more of a Fuaga guy as a run blocker.
Yes. Oh,
But not.
I think Fuaga's better suited to play guard in the NFL. Is my
Yeah,
personal opinion.
I agree strongly. But I also
I just
felt
don't
that
know if
way
he's.
about Fonu. I felt like Fonu was a better guard, but I still really
But
like him at tackle.
yes, that's the thing with Fontenot. I think he could be a fantastic guard,
Fuaga, you
but
don't
I
see him
also
working
think
at it. You don't.
I think he's gonna have some trouble against
Okay,
how
that's fair.
athletic the
I
edge rushers
completely
are in the league.
understand what makes you say that. But just watching Latham, he reminded me. This is gonna sound like a really bad thing, but he reminded me a lot of like a. In terms of as a pass blocker, I liked him as kind of like a Mekhi Becton, just stonewall type of guy.
Hmm.
And he would just.
And
There were
that's
some
what he
plays
is.
where he would just lift guys up and forklift them.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. But as a run blocker, like, he does get caught up. Like, there's no doubt. And I also don't know how much of a zone blocking guy he is. I don't really
Hmm.
love the scheme fit. But like you said, Bill Callahan, we have to have some confidence here, no?
And yeah, we have to. And it's weird to watch again. Like I said, like he's a big dude,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like just not the highlight reel of run blocking that you were really expecting
Mhm.
from, like, and that's kind of something you saw with like Alex Leatherwood in college. He didn't do that, you know.
Mhm.
He like, is it a Bama thing at that point? You know
Well,
what I
I
mean?
was going to mention Evan Neal was kind of similar, too.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And
and those guys didn't work out.
no, not yet. No, they did not. So I'm excited to see it because there's a world where like Brian Callahan's like, well, not Brian, Bill Callahan's like, hey, this is how you run block, and he's like, oh, okay, well, now I'm a
Yeah.
good run blocker all of a sudden, right? So, like that's just what like,
Yeah,
and that's
no,
something
you're
we didn't
right.
touch on in the head coach department. That's the other value Brian brought to this team is I get to bring over one of the best offensive line coaches in the league,
Mhm.
which. If you're talking about the biggest weakness of this team, offensive line is probably the biggest weakness.
Yeah.
So that's another big deal. But outside of Latham, there's Peter Skronsky. I loved Skronsky coming out of college last year, especially playing guard, and he had his rookie problems last year. But especially now, again, playing under like
I
Brian Callahan gives this entire line a boost at the end. Like that's something you're going to see with the seriously. That's how good of a coach he is. But
I
especially
was
with
worried.
Skronsky
I was worried about Skoronsky uh, as a
as a
tackle. I was
tackle,
worried about him because short arms. But as a
I agree with
guard,
you.
I was worried about him because of the lack of strength. I felt like he was in this weird middle. He's almost like a tweener on the offensive line.
Hmm.
But man, this guy's so technically sound. Like
So
when he gets his hands inside, you just see the textbook zone blocking.
yep.
And he does a good job with it. Again, it just sucks because he gets overpowered a lot. And it happened often last year. It doesn't matter how good of leverage you have. If you're not strong enough, you're not strong enough. This is the NFL.
Hmm.
Everyone
Yeah.
has good leverage, right? So he's in this weird tweener role. It's really strange to me. I still think he's good. I just don't think he'll ever. I don't think the return on investment will ever be there for the 11th overall pick.
And we'll get to Cushenberry in a sec here, who is probably the best current offensive lineman they have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a world there's also a world where you entertain Skronsky at center if he can snap a ball, but we'll see where that is. I think he's going to be a fine player.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Will he ever give them the return on investment of the 11th overall pick?
But I doubt it. But we'll
especially
see.
Keep in mind, a fine tackle with the 11th overall pick is like, okay, at least you filled the tackle role. There's a lot of guards out there, man.
Totally.
So if you draft a guard in the top 12, he better become like this all-pro or Pro Bowl at least. I just don't think he'll ever be that.
And that's kind of the thing with Skoronski, too, is like we don't know if his career at tackle is over. Like there's a world where he gets switched over to the right side because that side's not working out and they try him out there. There's a world where Latham isn't working out at tackle and they move Latham inside and they put Skoronski outside. It's all we have to see. It's still very short in their careers, but yeah, we'll have to see if they get that return on investment of the 11th overall pick. But now to Lloyd Cushenberry, best offensive lineman on this team right now. He's just a really solid center. Like he was good. He got better and better every year in Denver. He's a very smart player, cerebral player at that position. And, that's one part of the offensive line, thank goodness, you don't really have to worry about, in my eyes. It's the center's locked up. It's good. Mm-hmm. And right guard, I know some sites have Sadiq Charles starting there. It's not going to be him. It's probably going to be Daniel Brunskill.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to ask for your perspective on that battle. Again, I don't think it's going to be... I don't think that there's one choice that's way better than the other, but I am in agreement. Yeah, Sadiq, probably not the play.
No, not the play. I wouldn't say that. I think Brunskill, very, very average.
Really?
Not even average isn't even really the word. It's more just like it's not exciting. He can come in and play some decent snaps for you. He's not going to be a liability, but he's never going to be like you're not feeling great about it.
I will say pass pro against the blitz. He seems a little bit oblivious at times.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the kind of what the hell, man.
Yeah.
Like type of thing. Especially like interior guys, I'm kind of more concerned about that. But it does help having a center who consistently does a good job with that type of stuff. Maybe that'll help him kind of get on the same page. We'll see. But, yeah. The right guard spot, I would say, is almost like the big question mark on their offensive line.
Yeah.
And
I think there's one more big question.
Okay, so you consider that a big question mark because there's a guy at the right tackle spot that I am a pretty vocal fan of. Not fan,
I
but
think
like
I think we have the same guy.
Do we?
There is a battle going on there between Dylan Rayduns and Nicholas Petit-Frere.
Yeah.
I like Dylan Rayduns.
Oh, really? So we're on different sides of this war.
Oh no, we're on a war.
I like Frere. I've liked him since college.
And here's the thing: I totally get why you do. Like if you're going Frere, if Frere wins this, they're going with a higher upside pick.
Yeah.
Like he's got the athletic tools to be a good player.
Mm-hmm.
I just did not like what I saw on film when he played.
That's fair. That's fair.
He a lot of head down, off balance.
The lows are low.
The lows are really low.
The lows are low. But man, this guy can. He has some reps that are like, come on, man.
Totally. And it makes you more confident because again, Bill Callahan is coaching this squad.
Exactly.
And he's an athletic guy that can do that. Here's my thing with Ray Duns. I thought Ray Duns' film near the back half of the season was really not really good, but was good. You were not if that's what you're getting from the tackle spot, you're feeling good.
No, and that's kind of why I'm saying I don't think right tackle is a question mark, even if it's a question of who starts. I think no matter what, they're gonna have a good player out there because if it's Frere, it's because Frere had a good offseason. Yeah. If it's not Frere, it's because he didn't have a good offseason. Then they'll be fine at right tackle still, though.
Right.
At right guard, I just don't really like either.
Yeah, I don't like either.
It's at right guard, you're picking the better of two evils. At right tackle, you're picking between two players that really have a reason to be out on the football field.
Absolutely.
And then every other spot, they kind of got it checked. Now, do they have it checked overly well? Maybe, maybe not. Skoronski's still young. Of course, Latham, we haven't seen yet. The center is the only spot that we 100% know who's going to start, and we know it's good. Everywhere else is kind of a question mark, but at least they seem to have a plan at every spot except right guard. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the offensive line, though, like for a team that, again, we're saying should be rebuilding, it's they got a plan, so that's the good
They
thing.
have a plan and they have a great coach. It's a lot better outlook than it was last year when you had Andre Dillard out there.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
letting Arden Key do whatever he wanted to him.
But I did respect the strategy of going with Dillard because it was like a high upside. The season's out the wind. Like I respected that.
Totally.
And this season, I respect that. Even if it doesn't work out, I respect the approach that they're taking here.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to keep in mind, if it doesn't work out, it won't be the first time that Callahan had to make up for poor offensive line play.
Yes.
Like, he knows how to do it. He knows how to scheme up ways to get the ball out quick. He's done it before. Let's move over to the offensive superlatives, though.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with Offensive Player of the Year, who are you thinking?
My Offensive Player of the Year is going to be Will Levis. I believe in Will Levis.
Wow.
Yes, I believe in Will Levis. I love
him. So this explains why you don't think it's even remotely a competition. Okay.
Yes, I think he's going to be good. I think he's I just believe in him as a player. Now he has to clean up what was bad because he has trouble. Like he'll like on film, something comes open quick. Got to learn to just take it. You don't want to hold on to the ball.
He plays Madden.
He plays Madden.
He plays Madden in real life.
He wants to play home run ball. And Brian Callahan's got a good track record working with quarterbacks as his coordinator. You know what I mean? And I think he can. I think he can learn behind that. And the talent's just the highs are high with Levis, as we said with Petit Frere. Like the highs are high, and if they can just tame him a little bit, he's a good player. And I think he can be like a. If there's a world where he ends up the 17th best quarterback in the league this next year, after with this squad that we're saying isn't even like the role players are fine, they're not great. Like I think you're feeling good about that as the Titans. He's going to be my Offensive Player of the Year. Who's going to be yours?
So you might hate mine even more than I dislike yours. I put Calvin Ridley, actually. Because, like I said...
Hey, if Will Levis is going to win it, he needs Calvin Ridley to play good.
I really value the idea... First off, I don't think any of these guys are going to have phenomenal seasons. I really don't. I don't have much faith in this offense, if I'm being completely honest. But Calvin Ridley is I still think, is a really good route runner, even in his film with Jacksonville, right?
Yeah.
However, he has to clean some stuff up. Route running, to me, is the most important trait as a wide receiver. Now, you could lack route running prowess and still be a very good receiver, but if you are a good route runner, that opens a lot of different paths in terms of how you can be utilized. And that versatility, I think, again, this isn't an offense that really has an absurd amount of like, oh yeah, you're going to run a post and then make it into a corner and then sell vertical halfway through the route. Like, it's not going to be much of that. Mm-hmm. But when they do ask for the double move, I think he's going to do a good job. When they do ask for someone to just clear defenders out of the way so Tyler Boyd could get open, he's going to do very good. Like, I think it's just the hands. It really is. Like, that's my big concern.
I think there might be a physicality issue.
Okay,
as well there,
sure, but I think that they're not going to ask him to play that physicality.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, he is going to be their guy that they just want separating. And when you're separating, you don't need to be physical because there's no one near you, right? It's just a question of catch the damn football. That's all. Mm-hmm. That's all. And I also think Calvin Ridley's ball skills in terms of tracking the ball in air, underrated. Very underrated, I think. Like
it's just about catching the ball.
Tracking the ball, he's fine. But then actually, like, catching it, very different story. Very different. But again, that was last year. That is, I still believe, one of the more fixable issues in all of football. I sound like a broken record with how much I've said. Good route runner, bad hands. Then fix it. And then we're fine. And again, with me, this is more of a, I don't really love anyone else on this offense, so I'm going with him type of thing.
And then for Offensive Rookie of the Year, well, I'm sure we have the same one of J.C. Latham.
Yeah. I mean, who else would you say, right?
Exactly.
It's got to be him.
It's got to be him. And do you have your 12th man and or
I have my X Factor.
Okay.
My X Factor is your Offensive Player of the Year, Will Levis.
There you go.
And really, whoever plays quarterback, again, I'm still not 100% sure he starts the entire season. I think he's probably the favorite. Like, if someone were to start the entire season, it would be him. I just think a mid-season substitution is pretty likely. I'd still say like 65% sure Will Levis plays the whole season, but that's still like, that's still a 35% chance that that's not what happens in my mind.
Right.
Like, and I'm not necessarily saying Mason Rudolph. I'm not necessarily saying Malik Willis, but I'm saying it's very possible. Will Levis, though, they need someone that could distribute the football, and they're going to rely on their quarterback to operate an offense that isn't overly simplistic or quarterback friendly. Therefore, the quarterback kind of has a huge impact on that.
Yes.
So we're in agreement there. I'm assuming that both your X Factor and your 12th man are on defense.
I have my X Factor on offense, actually. My X Factor is going to be Treylon Burks in the sense of, like, he fits this, like, again, you think back to, I'm not saying he's Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, but in this, what he did with Cincinnati and what he asked those receivers to do, Treylon Burks can do that. Get vertical. No, like, that's the type of player he can be. And if he can stay healthy and can get a starting role in this offense and does fit that system, and out of nowhere becomes kind of that, even the number 2 receiver would be great in this sort of style of offense. And if he's good, makes the ceiling of this receiver room even higher, makes it easier on the quarterback, especially for a guy like Levis that likes to launch it downfield to his playmakers. All the X factor here is saying is if he's good and can play that sort of role at an effective rate and can stay healthy, I think that's a very big boon to this offense.
Mm-hmm. I find that interesting. It's just, if he becomes a wide receiver 2, who are you taking off the field, Ridley or D-Hop?
And that's where it's interesting. That's where you and I's conversation of who's the one comes into play.
Because we agree Burks wouldn't play the slot, right?
Yes.
So we agree Boyd remains a starter.
Yes. Boyd or whoever in the slot, yeah.
Yeah. Or Kyle Phillips. It could be Kyle Phillips.
Could Hopkins play in the slot?
He can, but it's just, again, what I kind of want more after the catch from my slot receiver. But then again, how much of that is
I don't
Boyd
think exactly. I don't think Boyd's going to provide that much after the catch.
Yeah, it should be interesting. There's a lot of different ways that could play out. They could rotate guys. I mean, Calvin Ridley, in theory, could play the slot. In theory. It's definitely an interesting one. It definitely is. There's a lot of ways this receiver core could play out.
Yes.
It's really interesting to me. But now let's move on to the defensive scheme. This is one I'm excited to talk about it.
I am too. This is
the first McDonald disciple we have to talk about.
First McDonald disciple. I just did a video of this about McDonald disciples on my TikTok. There's currently, I would say, 4 of them right now in the league. There's Denard Wilson. There's Anthony Weaver of the Dolphins. There's the Zach Orr, who's replacing McDonald. Mm-hmm. And then you have, why am I blanking on his name? He's for the Chargers now. He played on.
Jesse Minter, yeah.
Jesse
I was going to say, what are you thinking of? And I was like, he
Minter.
played with him, or I guess coached with him in Michigan. I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
Yeah, wow, there's 4. And then you had the man himself as the Seattle head coach.
And this was the best defensive football last year. I'd argue McDonald is maybe the best defensive mind in the league. He is a genius. And teams now, the video I made was Mike McDonald is potentially the next Vic Fangio in the sense of teams around the league are going to try and copy what he did last year.
Yeah, I think it's more of, so you say the next Vic Fangio. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, not in scheme-wise, but...
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Like, yeah, in terms of how he impacts the league. I was willing to kind of say the more interesting name of Shanahan, but for defense.
I saw an interesting one of the McVay of defense. I saw someone say that. Like, but that kind
McVay was a disciple of someone. So that's way worse.
Totally.
Yeah. Because McVay is just a Shanahan disciple. Because if McDonald is a McVay, then that makes Jim Harbaugh Shanahan, and that just isn't really...
Totally.
The hilarious thing about this Ravens defense and how it's ran, if you watch, everything you think you see pre-snap completely changes post-snap. All 11 players, you will have defensive tackles dropping into a middle zone, and then you'll have a middle linebacker that you thought was going to play in that middle zone, you'll have him drop into a deep third on the other side of the field. And then you'll have Kyle Hamilton dropping down from the middle third you thought he was going to be playing in. Now he's playing the flat on the other side of the field, too. Like, you will see players, that should be getting exploited for playing completely out of position not get exploited because you have no idea they're going to be there. And it never makes sense, but it always works.
And that comes down to the coaching style of McDonald. Like, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic did a fantastic article on this, and he talked about what kind of makes the McDonald system. And it's not that his play calls are incredibly unique. It's the way he teaches his blitz packages. He teaches his blitzes attached to. He does. I say it like this. He doesn't teach his blitzes attached to fronts. He attaches them. He teaches them as blitz patterns. So, and has names for them. So, like, his example was if you call Suns, that's a strong safety blitzing off the edge while the end is coming back into coverage. So you can be lined up in a base 4-3 front, and then you call Suns during the play, and everybody on the defense knows what's happening. So it's very interesting in his coaching style. It's a very simplified and modern way of coaching, and that's something that, like, he also touches on in the article of he was a college head coach. You had young kids, well, not head coach, but college defensive coordinator. You had young kids in and out of the program every year. You needed a more efficient, simplified, modern way of doing things. And that's why he's able to go into the crazy fronts and crazy blitzes that he does, because his players understand and are able to keep up with everything that's happening and going on. Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting read. I recommended you go give it a read. Mm-hmm. But yes, then that's kind of that's part of also what these teams want to try and emulate is this verbiage, is the way they coach their teams. Like, that's what's so interesting mm-hmm. here.
And again, I think when McDonald entered the league, he was known for the blitz packages. Mm-hmm. And obviously those are still crazy. But I think what it is now that really differentiates him is the disguised coverages mm-hmm. with these blitzes. You see some guys that specialize in disguised coverages, but then you'll see other guys that specialize in heavy blitzes and, unique forms of blitzing. When you mix it together, it's like you're mixing what Jim Mora used to do all the way back with what Rex Ryan used to do, along with what Belichick does so well. And you mix all of this stuff that made these defensive minds so great and put it all in one scheme, then modernize it with modern personnel, hybrid players that can do anything on any given snap. That is how these defenses are built. I'm saying defenses, plural, because Denard Wilson is an example of this going global. This is not just going to be one team running this anymore. This is going to be what?
Everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Everywhere.
And right now there's just 5 teams. It's going to be 10 teams next year. Year after that, it's going to be 17. It's going to take the league over. Completely take the league over. Congratulations on the Titans for getting onto the train early, because we saw with McDonald's scheme the first year, there were some growing pains. Now we're expecting those growing pains this year. Should be really interesting to see the little wrinkles in Denard's scheme as opposed to McDonald's.
Absolutely. And so let's just get right into it. What do you think the best part of this defense is, roster-wise?
Well, roster-wise, I would go ahead and say, that's tough. I'd probably say I like their corner room the most. Specifically the corners, though. The safeties, I'm kind of like, it's all right with.
Yeah.
But the corner room is the really, really interesting thing here.
Super interesting. And this is one of those players is one of those moves of like, oh, we thought you were trying to rebuild.
Yeah. I think that was the move that officially put them on notice as like, oh, you're trying to compete a little bit.
Yes. And we'll start with him. We'll start in this corner room in the secondary. The L'Jarius Sneed, coming from the Chiefs, was one of the best corners in the league last year, and gets a massive contract after a trade for a cornerback, and he's going to be their corner one. What do you think of Sneed in this McDonald style
Last
defense?
year, he was the best press man corner in football.
Yes, absolutely.
But how much are we seeing that in Denard Wilson's defense? I don't know. I think maybe this is a tell of how that's going to work out. Maybe this is a tell that they're going to be running a lot of press man, but then how do you do those disguises that you wanted to do so much? It's very strange to me. I'm not going to say I hate the move because of the scheme, but it does raise some questions to me. I need to see how this one works out. Because if you have him in zone, he isn't worth the contract that you paid him.
Definitely not.
You're paying him because you're paying him because of the best press man corner in football. You're not paying him to drop him into zones. And maybe you'll see him just shadow the opposing wide receiver 1, and then everyone else, the other 10 people, just play 10-on-10 football with the disguise coverages in the zones. Okay, maybe. I don't know. It's a strange one.
It's a little strange to me as well. But Denard Wilson, defensive back coach of the Ravens, like he might have a plan here for Snead. But you look at the partner opposite from him, probably going to be Chidobe Awuzie. And he's a guy who came over from Cincinnati, coming with Callahan. He's had some really good seasons in Cincinnati, and I think he's a nice side corner 2 to have. You're not worried about the cornerback.
Coming off injury, so he might there's some questions about how he'll recover from that, but as a 2, he probably will be fine.
Probably will be fine. And someone I'm a big fan of in the slot, Roger McCreary.
Love him.
Love Roger McCreary.
Oh, my goodness. He's someone, you want to drop him into zone, he could do that really well. He can. Mm-hmm. And if you want to put him in manhole, do that just fine, too. But mainly a zone guy. Like him a lot as a tackler. He does the traditional nickel corner stuff, and he's just a heck of a player, man.
Heck of a player.
His effort when the ball is in the air, I mean, he goes full extension to try and make plays, and he does a really good job at it, man. It does lead to him getting exposed, or it can lead to him getting exposed at times. We'll see if he continues to get as lucky in terms of not getting exposed, but he's really aggressive when that ball's in the air.
Yep. And then we'll move from, there's actually the one more player I want to talk about in this corner room, just because he was a first-round pick for him, in Caleb Farley. Is he going to be something? Probably not.
If he could stay healthy, maybe. We don't know. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, ever.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the thing is, I doubt he stays healthy. You can't bet on him staying healthy at this point. But
even if he does stay healthy, is he the same player we saw?
Yeah,
no one knows.
Because here's the thing with Farley. You take away the injury concerns with Farley, he's picked higher than he was in that draft, and he was a first round pick already. His tape was unbelievable. Yeah, and it's just you hope he can come back for it. If he can, and he is the same player, then oh my God, this cornerback room's insane. Yeah. But at this point, it's just someone to keep an eye on. We'll see if he can overcome those injury concerns. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the safeties. And again, we touched on it. A fine room. You're not overly excited. Yeah. You're not overly worried either. Elijah Molden and Armani Hooker. I like Hooker more than I like Molden.
Yeah, I completely agree. Armani, he's someone very disciplined in zone. Very disciplined. Neither of these safeties will ever stand out because they don't make big plays. But you go into their zone, quarterback shouldn't throw at you. Really. Very simple. They're good in zone. That's their job.
And I would argue that the McDonald's system is really safety friendly, if there ever is a word for that.
Unless you're being used like a Kyle Hamilton.
Unless you're being Kyle Hamilton. Can I ask, is there somebody on this team? Not that.
I wanted to ask that same question.
And would you say it's maybe even a Roger McCreary type of thing?
I think if you had to go with someone, I think you would have to go McCreary. Is there a line? Cedric Gray is a hell of an athlete.
Yeah, but can he play that? I guess if you're
definitely not year one.
Yeah.
Definitely not year one, but maybe the plan is to develop Cedric Gray into that.
And wait, can James Williams do that? Rookie out of Miami?
Safety
turned linebacker?
Well, in theory, he's built to be just like that.
Yeah.
Only problem is that he's really not good at football.
Yeah,
he's really not good.
Raw. Very raw.
And a lot.
I do think he had some decent. I thought he was decent in coverage for the most part. I'm not saying he was great. I think
when he's in that linebacker and he has to cover less space.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
But when he's a linebacker, he can't recognize plays quick enough, and that was kind of Kyle Hamilton's best trait.
Right. Yeah. We're not saying who's going to be Kyle Hamilton. in here? Who could potentially play that role for them, and like who could at least try it out there? I think James Williams is probably.
I guess he's your best bet because formulaically,
That might be
that's
why you drafted him. I didn't
yeah,
think about that. Yeah.
yeah. But he's just not.
Yeah, no,
He's
I'm with you.
not.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
not Kyle Hamilton.
no, he's just like not. I I question if he could play any role, let
Yeah,
alone every
totally.
role.
That's why he was picked so late. That's why
Yeah,
every role.
I think. Listen, if I had to go with someone, I'm going McCreary. If I had to
Yes.
go with someone I think can play that very well to a Kyle Hamilton extent, I'm going with Cedric Gray because I think that dude's a freak. But we're not talking about linebackers yet.
Yes.
Yeah, unless we want to
So
move over to the linebackers now.
I guess it's time we move on to linebackers. Actually,
Okay,
yeah, we
yeah.
covered everything we want to cover.
Well,
Let's move to linebackers.
I'm just gonna start with Cedric Gray. I know he's
Yes,
not a starter right now, but I
he's
just
gonna
want to
be a
mention it.
starter at some
Yeah.
point. He's gonna be. A
Are
starter
you
at some
on the
point.
Cedric Gray train? Because
Absolutely,
I was
Cedric
I
Gray.
might be
Big.
Cedric Gray's biggest fan.
Yeah,
I might
I'm.
be.
I'm a Cedric Gray guy. He wasn't my. Who was my top linebacker? Now that I think
No,
about it, he
my
wasn't my top one, but he was. I was high on him. I
he
was high
was
on him.
my top. He was my
Okay,
top.
that's totally fair. I get why.
I don't think he's a day one guy. I don't
Mhm.
because he's a bad tackler. But play recognition,
In coverage, he's amazing.
great coverage guy. Covers a lot of space. Freak athlete. And he could hit hard. He could shed blocks too. Really, he checks almost every box. I don't know if he processes plays well or if he's just really instinctive and really good at chasing the ball. I can't quite tell. He could bite on play action a little bit. But overall, he's someone that, you know, you know what they say, right? The old defensive saying, if you're near the ball, only good things will happen. He's always near the ball.
Yeah.
He's always near the ball, and he'll do anything to get near it. There could be Penny Sewell going up to the second level to block him. He's going to find a way to at least either drive Penny Sewell to the ball because he does have that type of strength, or he will work around him in order to get to the ball. Like,
Yep.
he is that type of guy. He will relentlessly pursue the ball while being a freak athlete. I mean, that's how you get like the freaks, right? Very high upside guy.
That's kind of my mindset whenever it comes to drafting linebackers in the NFL. Draft the super athletic linebackers, the freaks later in the draft, and let them develop for a year or two, and then come out and do their thing. But that whole North Carolina's linebacker tape in general was really fun to watch. The other guy opposite of him was also really good. I forget his name, but I like Cedric Gray. I think he starts at some point this season, if not the day one start. I'll be honest with you, if like this linebacker room isn't good enough to where I can say surely Cedric Gray is not going to start day one.
I think if they were a rebuilding team, they would probably have him out there. But because they're not a rebuilding team, I think, the will to try and compete, they're going to go out there and leave Gibbons and Kenneth Murray. I just looked. I have my notes written down with the starters, and I just remembered Kenneth Murray's on that team, and I audibly gagged.
So we'll start with Jack Gibbons real quick. Just standard good like he's a solid run defender.
Yeah.
He's not a liability in coverage. He's not good either. I wouldn't say either. Like he's just
I would say he's closer to a liability.
Okay, I'm okay with
anything.
that. But like he's okay. Like you're not excited. You're not excited about anybody outside of Cedric Gray in this linebacking group. But, like, you feel better about Gibbons than you do about Kenneth Murray, I would say. And Kenneth Murray's awful. Kenneth Murray's really
terrible.
I went to the Dolphins-Chargers game week 1 last year. I watched that. I did a film review on Murray after the game because I was so astounded at how awful he was. He bites on play action way too often. He can't defend the run. He's a liability in coverage. He is quite literally, like, bad. And it sucks because he does fit that kind of mold of athletic linebacker that you take later on, but we forget was he a first round pick?
I remember he got mocked into round 1. I don't quite he was definitely at least a second rounder.
I think he was.
I remember
he was at least
him being
a second rounder.
I remember him getting mocked into round 1. I specifically remember that. He was in the Joe Burrow class if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yep, 23rd overall pick.
23rd, yeah. So listen, we were talking about Cedric Gray a little bit. Kenneth Murray is what Cedric Gray might end up looking like in the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Athletic guy who just can't put it together.
At all.
Not in the sense. In any sense of the word.
But At least Cedric Ray, we haven't had our hopes and dreams shattered yet. So there we
So
go.
you're not overly excited about this linebacker room. If Cedric, you are excited about Cedric Ray, but that's where it kind of ends, and he's got to develop a bit first before
Yeah.
you're overly excited about him as a player. But now let's move to that defensive line, and I feel way better about this defensive line than I do the linebackers. Not as good about as the corners, but there's a very special player that's here
There
there,
is.
and then
There is.
some then some solid players overall. So
They
I say we
they
start.
they like the big guys.
They do.
They
And
do.
we'll talk about the other big guy because I liked him outside of issues. But let's start with Jeffrey Simmons, the highlight of this team. Definitely the best player on this team. He is incredible in every sense of the word, as a run defender, as a pass rusher, like consistent he is some of the highest double team rates in the league, and for good reason. He's just fantastic. What do you have to say about Jeffrey Simmons?
I mean, yeah, dude. He's such an athlete. Big guy, so he doesn't get moved. But if he wants to drive you back, he can. He has a bull rush, but he does it way more with athleticism and handiwork. Again, he has the strength to bull rush. He's just more of a technical savant. He's going to do a lot of work in that way. Hell of a pass rusher, too. I mean, this guy works around blocks, and it helps a lot that he has some big guys around him, too. He's going to chase down outside zone. He's going to shed blocks and blow up inside zone. You run trap, he's just going to anchor down against the pulling guard. I mean, he does... What do you run against him, right? Even if you're passing the ball, he's getting past the opposing lineman and getting in the quarterback's face. He's just one of those game breakers on the interior.
Take it like this, in this scheme, Justin Madubuike had 15 sacks last year. Jeffrey Simmons is very much so the better player outside of the two, like by a good margin. Jeffrey Simmons is insane, and again, he's never quite had that 15 sack season as a player yet. You see it on film, but that hasn't quite happened because the defensive line around him hasn't been all that great. I would say, but now I think there's a world where in the scheme it's better. And secondly, what I want to move to the guy who's presumably going to be next to him, who they put the second-round pick on, in Devondre Sweat. Maybe you can't double team him as much because he might be too big for a guard.
It's not going to be as stunt-heavy of a team, which I think kind of hurts the defensive line as a whole.
Yeah.
But it benefits Jeffrey Simmons because he was someone that it was almost like wasted movement when you had him stunting a little bit. Like, he had the athleticism to do it, so it wasn't too bad. But I think part of the reason he was getting pressures instead of sacks was because he was spending extra time with that horizontal movement to get to his gap. Because that's how that defense worked in the past. Now it's very different. He might do it a little bit. Like, they're still going to incorporate him moving a lot horizontally and then vertically. But it's not going to be almost like an every down thing like it was in the past. Also, Jeffrey Simmons will be dropping back in zone coverage.
He's athletic enough to do it. That is going to see it.
And
he will have an interception next year.
Denard Wilson will do it, and so will this other guy that you're about to mention, who is a freak.
You want to talk about a huge player? Devondre Sweat is a huge player. I love Devondre Sweat on film. I think I talked to you about that. I was huge on him. Like early on in the draft process, this changed as I got into more film and more players. Like super early on in the draft process, I had Sweat going at the end of the first round. Like, I was huge on him, and I was happy to see him go this high. Now, are you concerned about a guy with some not great history of, a guy with a DUI recently heading up to the draft? He's had party-ish concern issues. Now he's in Nashville, Tennessee. You're a little, not great. You don't feel great about that, but if he can just stay down, keep his head low, and play football, got a good football player. He's a freak. He's huge.
Not an every down guy.
No, not by any stretch.
He just doesn't have the stamina. No, that's the thing. He has the talent. Like, if you want to put him down out there on a third down, he could do it.
That's where I went. I agree stamina-wise. Yeah. But, as skill set-wise, I think he can play 3 downs.
No, he has the skills. It's just you're going to have to get him to lose weight if you want him to stay there.
Yes, but you're not moving him as a run defender at all. He's just too big. And as a pass rusher, too big. Might be too big for guards for one thing, and here's the other. He has a little bag of pass rush moves that he does use. Like
Yeah.
it's interesting to watch a guy that big do this
Yeah.
to a guard. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh wow, I didn't know you could do that. So there's a world where if Devondre Sweat's like good and what I think he can be, like you can't afford to, like you kind of have to pick your poison of who are we gonna, like he might be. My whole point is he might be too big for guards to handle one-on-one, and you have to double team him.
And it becomes worse when you keep in mind they're going to be running like a kind of a 4-down front. I guess you could consider it. It's either a 4-2 or a 3-3-5, depending on what you want to consider Harold Landry. But they're going to be running some plays with Devondre Sweat on the edge. And there's going to be some plays with Jeffrey Simmons on the edge. Like, they're going to be experimenting all over. All over. They'll have Devondre Sweat as a looper. They don't care. Like, they're going to experiment with all these guys at different spots. Okay? Rotate Arden Key in a little bit when Devondre Sweat is tired, and then that's the situation we got going on. Then you got blitz and linebackers, too. Things could get hectic. Okay?
Yeah.
Roger McCreary on the blitz. Things are going to get hectic here. Okay? It should be really fun to see. Devondre Sweat is a heck of an asset.
I didn't even think about Cedric Gray on the blitz. He's going to be fun to watch, man. Oof. But anyway, that's the defensive tackle duo, which you're really excited about. And like depth-wise, Sebastian Joseph Day is like an ideal third.
Well, I was thinking Sebastian Joseph Day would be the edge, no? Sebastian Joseph Day and Harold Landry.
I mean, he could, but I mean, he's 6'3", 310. They're gonna have him play.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You know what? You're right. He's probably gonna be more of a tackle. I don't know. I feel like they're gonna move people around a lot.
Oh, they will.
Because
like when we're saying depth, like I don't think Sebastian Joseph Day is going to be on the field a ton. Like,
so you think that Arden Key is going to be the edge?
Yes.
I see. Well, the thing that kind of frustrates me, and I kind of hate how we're both looking at the R-Lads depth chart, and just a little rant because I hate how people do this.
I don't like how that's set up either.
Yeah, I hate the entire a 3-4 defensive end. Yeah, it's not a defensive end. First off, they're not going to be base 3-4. They're not. They're going to be a 4-2. 4-2 or 3-3-5, whatever you want to consider it. I really hate that they label people as defensive ends when they're not. And right now they have Sebastian Joseph Day labeled as the defensive end. That's part of the reason why I'm saying he's the edge.
Of course, but that's when I think of like since they have it at 3-4, when you think of 3-4 defensive end.
Yeah, that's an interior guy. I get you.
3-4 defensive end.
Yeah. But the difference is they actually run a 3-4.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
That's why this is an R-Lads issue, not a you issue.
No, I get it. Again, you think Devondre Sweat might? Again, I think they can do it. It's just a question of how often, right?
And
because they are willing to experiment like that. They had downs with Travis Jones, who was another like big but really fast guy. They had him playing edge sometimes. Like they aren't afraid to do that.
And that's the thing. When we're going over the positions right now, I'm not saying they're not going to move people around and see Simmons and Sweat on the edge, but like standardly, if you're going to come out in this, like you're just coming out in the standard 4-2, I think it's going to be Sweat, Simmons, Landry, and Key. With the Key and Landry.
Okay, so you think Key? I think Key's a good player. I don't know. It's like, yeah, I guess just because of how they're running their personnel, he'll have to be the other edge. But it's just like, I think Sebastian Joseph Day is just the better player out of the two. But I guess at the edge spot, you kind of have to go.
At the edge spot, you kind of have to go Key, I think. And even like as a pass rusher, maybe, I don't know, you probably don't agree with this, but like as a just like if you want a guy that can get to the quarterback, I think Key might be a little better than Landry is right now.
Well, so here's the key difference right now, right? Here's something I need to mention as we talk about Landry a little bit here. I don't want to say he's a stunt merchant, but he was a big benefactor of how Vrabel ran that defense, of how stunt heavy it was. And this defense not being as stunt heavy, Landry is going to have his worst season in a while. I'm expecting.
Yeah, I didn't know how you felt about Landry. I'm not a huge Landry guy. I don't think he's that great.
I think he's good in that scheme. It's just now they're not running that scheme. And
Yes,
maybe they're going to keep running that. Like, we know that this is in the McDonald playbook. Do we know if it's in this variation of the McDonald playbook? Maybe, maybe
see.
not. It could be. And if it is, do we know that they want to run it often? That's enough. We're going hypotheticals within hypotheticals within hypotheticals right now.
Right.
If they want to run the stunt-heavy defense, Harold Landry should have a good season. If they still have the stunts a little bit, Landry should be good when they're running them. When they're not, If they don't run them at all, Landry is a
Bad.
worse rusher
Yes.
than Arden King.
Absolutely. Like from a pure like, hey, we're just head up rushing the quarterback, tackle on the end. Yeah, Key's the better player, and definitely for me. And Key put together some like it's my Key. My question about Key is more as a run defender. Like if like
And that's part of the reason I'm like, I want Sebastian Jones out there, at least on early downs.
right,
They're going to be changing their personnel a lot on the defensive line. That's, again, something McDonald did last year.
yeah.
It's a question of what's going to be their most common. I think it could be really close. I think him and Key and Sebastian Joseph Day are going to be switching in and out a lot. I think. And then
Here's
maybe
the other thing. Like I wouldn't be. Harold Landry might be switching out a lot with those Sebastian Joseph Day type stuff, depending on the scheme they run.
Yeah,
like, I don't think
no, that's
I don't
true.
think Landry's very good right now. Like, to be completely honest with you, I didn't love what I saw last year. But we'll see. There's going to be a lot of people in and out of this rotation. This is just what this what's going to happen in this
Jeffrey
style.
Simmons is staying on the field now.
He will not be leaving. He's playing every snap.
He is their Matabuike guy.
Yes.
He's going to remain on the field every play.
Every single play.
This defense is a fun one. I think it should be a little bit of a fun. I don't know how good it will be because, again, we know McDonald's defense had its growing pains year one. Maybe that happens again here, but it should be a fun one to watch grow as the season goes on.
Something I'm going to bring up whenever we talk about a McDonald defense. One thing here is that, yes, it struggled in year one, and it struggled partway to year two until they got Roquan Smith. And Roquan Smith is such a massive part of that Ravens defense. He, like, having a good linebacker makes that I'm not saying it's going to be bad without Roquan Smith, but, like, having a good linebacker, a top linebacker like that, made things a lot easier on this defense in general. What he's able to call the plays, play the true Mike, knows what he's doing. It's a big deal. And I do think having a good linebacker, maybe not a top linebacker like Smith, of course, who's probably the second best in football, but like having a good linebacker and a good linebacking core helps this defense out a lot. And I think that's also another reason they might struggle this year because it's not very good. And unless Cedric Ray is good out the gate, I think it's tough because I think the linebackers are a really important part of this defense.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Again, you make a fair point, right? The defense wasn't good until Roquan came in. It wasn't great until Roquan came in. And Cedric Ray might have to play that role. And if Cedric Ray can't play that role, we don't know. But we also don't know how this defense truly looks. Maybe Denard Wilson is just going to have them do the stuff they did in the secondary with the disguise coverages and there's no blitzing, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they won't get creative with the fronts. We have no idea. Maybe it's just going to be a plain press man defense. And that's why they want L'Jarius Sneed. And it's very boring. It very well could be. We have no idea. We haven't seen this guy as a defensive coordinator yet. I'm excited, though, because of my optimism towards McDonald, guys. Let's go into the defensive superlatives before we go on to special teams, though. Defensive player of the year, I think we have the same name.
Yeah, of course, it's Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons.
It's got to be. Again, he's going to be their Matabuike. It should be. He's going to be killer. He's going to be killer.
Like if he pulls out a 15 sack season this year, I wouldn't be surprised. Like this is the type of player we're dealing with. And I think we probably have the same defensive rookie.
Yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for the other name that we've mentioned way more than I thought we would, but it's definitely T'Vondre Sweat.
Yeah, it's
definitely T'Vondre Sweat. Again, if you think Cedric A can be a day one guy, it's him. But I don't think so. But if he has a good training camp, maybe. I don't know. I'm just not really expecting him to start week one even. We'll see.
Right, and 12th man of the year, who happens to be on defense for me, it's gonna be Cedric Ray. I came into this with that. I think he Murray and Gibbons are probably gonna start, but Cedric Ray's gonna come in on blitzes. They're gonna use him because he is so athletic all around the defense. I think he's going to be 12th man of the year.
So I initially wrote down Arden Key, but I think we need to have a little bit of a discussion. We think Arden Key is going to have more snaps than Sebastian Joseph Day.
I would bet on it, but like you also think that Sebastian Joseph Day should start over him. So it's really your opinion of like,
Well,
is
but
he
again,
going to
it's
be
just
more
like,
of a
is he
rotational
really
guy?
that much of an every down edge? We know he can do it. Is he an every
Yeah.
down one?
If I think I wouldn't argue against keeping 12th man because he is going to be a rotational
whichever
guy.
one ends up being the 12th man, whichever one ends up getting less snaps between Arden Key and Sebastian Joseph Day. That's who I'm going with.
I like that.
Okay, so let's go into special teams because this is where one of their best players plays, actually. Another great punter. This is the second high caliber punter we've had to talk about. We have not got to talk about a fun kicker yet. Ryan Stonehouse is a dog. He's a dog. He is a really good player, consistently nailing it on punts. I think he had the most yards per punt in the NFL. I haven't checked, but he probably did last year. He was definitely up there. He was amazing last year, really. I know, he got hurt at some point recently, but he's still a great punter. He's Ryan Stonehouse.
Yeah,
I mean, what else is there to say?
He's going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but now, Nick Folk, anything overwhelming to say here?
No, you're not worried about Nick Folk, I'd say, but you're not excited about Nick Folk either.
Yeah, he's kind of just.
He might be the first kicker we've talked about that we actually know a whole lot about. The first 4 teams we touched on.
They just had no one.
We didn't know him.
Yeah. No, we've seen Folk kick. He doesn't miss easy ones. No. But he's not gonna make 50
He's
yards.
No Justin Tucker. He's no Justin Tucker.
He's just a kicker.
He's a kicker.
Okay. The return game, I cannot get optimistic about that. I can't. Is there a name you see here? Because Tajay Spears obviously isn't going to be a return.
Tajay Spears.
You think he's
I think you might see it, but Tony Pollard could do it. Tony Pollard could totally do it.
Again, those are their two backs. You think they're gonna put them out there?
That's just I could see. Well, considering the new rules, I think there's totally a world where you drop a play for him to get it, and you can see what you got to do. I think. I had one question heading into this that I think might be interesting. Does Malik Willis return anything at any point?
Ooh, that'd be fun.
That'd be fun.
I don't think they're willing to get creative though. It seems the Titans seem like a very firm anti-fun football team. You can't disagree. I mean, yeah, maybe I think Tajay Spears will get a couple. I don't think he's gonna be I think it's gonna be we have a big game and it's close. Tajay Spears go out there, but I mean Treylon Burks, if he doesn't get much volume.
Yeah, he could do it. I like Jaquan Jackson. I think he's fast. I liked late round darling for me.
Yeah, Jaquan Jackson is currently their returner.
Okay. Again, I think Malik Willis returning stuff would be really fun.
I think it would be fun. I just don't think they'll do it.
But no, I'm not overly excited. But I do also think we see a world where one of the two, Pollard or Spears, gets a couple returns.
I think they get a couple, but I just don't think it's going to be a lot. Yeah. I think Treylon Burks is the only name that I'm oh yeah, I want to see that one.
Yeah, totally.
But even then, I don't know. How much of a role is he going to have in the offense?
And go let Cedric Gray return something.
McCreary, maybe? But McCreary, we expect him to also be an every down guy. Mm-hmm. So I don't...
There's not a lot of fun depth for this.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. Even if you're looking for, lead block... Caleb Farley, when he's healthy...
James Williams would be a fun lead blocker.
I think James Williams as a lead blocker, definitely. I think he's going to be a special teams guy, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
On every form of special teams, I think he's going to be a gunner. I think he's going to be out there on kicking team. I think he's going to be all over.
Colton Dowell is an interesting name. He's he was a late round pick this year. Just he's the traits guy. He's not a very good receiver outside of that. He played at Tennessee Martin, so but he's a traits guy. So
yeah, if we're assuming Kenneth Murray gets benched for Cedric Gray, Kenneth Murray for sure as a special teamer, he should be fine. I want to say Chig, but I just think as a starting tight end, do you really get him out there? I don't know. Nick Vannett as a lead blocker, definitely a fun one.
Two of the two power backs that they have in the depth chart right now, and Haskins and Chestnut could do it too. They're big dudes.
Yeah, there you go. There's two more guys. So there's some names that you're like, okay, yeah, they can go out there, but they're not really names that I'm like, oh yeah, those guys are really gonna get it done. Like
Oh
there's
no,
not.
no, no, none of that.
Yeah. Anyway, though, let's move on to the predictions to wrap it up. Give us a floor, give us a ceiling. We agreed the lower of our two floors. We agreed on 4 and 13, correct?
Yep.
And then higher of our two ceilings, I put 7 and 10. You put 8 and 9.
Yeah. So around the same thing, regardless.
Yeah. Let's go through the schedule. You have a prediction at the moment?
Yeah, my prediction for this team, I think they're gonna go 6-11.
6 and 11. I put 5 and 12. So
Okay.
generally, I'm just lower on the team just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. And I think that kind of comes down to how we think Will Levis is going to do this.
Yeah, I think that, and yeah, no, I think that's the main reason. Chicago, week 1.
That start to the season's brutal. Oh my God, yeah, that first 8 weeks of the season is brutal.
Yeah.
You got
the bye
Bears,
week.
Yeah, you got Bears, Jets, Packers, Dolphins, Colts, Bills, Lions, and then you get the Patriots. And then you get the Chargers, and you're feeling a little better. That's a brutal schedule.
Yeah, but I mean,
schedule. AFC South is hard.
Listen, you look at that first 8-game stretch. You see points where they could go ahead, win one.
There's a world where I think week 1's intriguing. You're going to see Caleb Williams going up against what should be a confusing defense with two good corners.
It's also the first week where you're running that defense in an NFL game or a regular season NFL game. So I don't, some of those.
So it's really like, it's really like Caleb Williams in his first start. How good do we think he's going to be against a defense that should on paper be pretty good, but it is their first time running that defense?
Yeah, and it's so different from what they used to run. So I think there's going to be growing pains. Like I think it's going to be sloppy football on both sides.
Yeah, I think that, but I do think that's a game that they could potentially come out and win.
I think so.
Jets, no. I think the Jets.
I think if they get the defense going quickly, they could go ahead and confuse Jordan Love, make him throw some picks in week 3.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But I also we'll talk about the Packers when we get to the Packers. But like I think that defense can be a lot better.
Sure, that's fair. Miami beats the teams they're better than. I think Miami wins that one.
We didn't beat them last year.
Yeah, fair. But I think for the most part.
But like
when Miami plays one of those worst teams.
I think it's also worth an ask of like, we're also going against another McDonald protege here.
Oh yeah.
Not only that, but is Phillips and is Chubb going to be healthy by then? So then you're looking at Chop and Shaq Barrett, and I'm not as excited about that at all. Yeah. Right. So I think it's I think it's intriguing. So I think that's a game that's intriguing. I think the Colts beat them outright. I think the Colts we'll get to the Colts, but
Week 6 off the bye week, you think they? I think off the bye week, sure.
Yeah, off the bye week, sure.
It's also a division rival. You're playing them in Tennessee. Like I think they should have that.
The Bills is up in the air for me. Like it's really depending on what we're getting from the Bills, because there's still a chance they're good, which again we'll get to, but there's also a chance that they're struggling. So.
And then going into Detroit, that's
a no-no. Yeah, that's a no-no.
But then you get an easy break playing against Foxborough in.
And by that point, the defense should be playing a lot better.
Yeah, and it's in Tennessee.
That offense, it's in Tennessee, exactly.
Chargers. That one I think should be a really good game. Mm-hmm. It's in LA.
Vikings is super interesting. Like the quarterback play could be abysmal. Like it could just be really bad. So that could be intriguing, but it could also be good. So we'll see.
But I also think if rookie quarterback against this defense, we're assuming they're kind of in stride at this point. McCarthy probably won't look too good.
Yeah. Texans
in Houston, they're not. There's no way.
They're not winning.
There's no way.
They could beat the Commanders.
Oh yeah, they could. They could definitely beat the
totally
Commanders. Playing against Jacksonville in Tennessee, that's a division rival. Coming into your stadium, that's always that's always at least a fight. I like to think. Yes. So Bengals, but then Titans. Cincinnati revenge game for
Mr. Callahan.
Yep. It's in Tennessee again, back-to-back games at home.
That's not like, I'd still say the Bengals win that, but that's not like impossible.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. But then going into Indianapolis and then going into Jacksonville,
it's tough.
But then ending it on Houston, maybe Houston's benching their guys. You could get an easy win there.
So yeah, this isn't like the worst
Yeah,
schedule in the
it's
world.
not
For
it's
sure.
not brutal, but I mean, I'm not too optimistic. Listen,
Yeah,
when you're one of those teams that people see on their schedule and they say we have an easy game that week because we're playing you, it's hard to say you have an easy schedule, right?
right. And
But
here's
still,
here's
I like it.
yeah, and like here's my thing. Like even if Willis balls out, not Willis, sorry.
Well, it could be
Who
Willis.
knows?
It could
Who
be
knows?
Willis.
But even if Levis balls out, like the ceiling of this team is just limited on who they have on the ball.
Yeah.
It's just not a lot of top end talent, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to keep you limited. Even if Willis and hey, best case scenario, you go 6-11. Willis looked good, and you're heading in the next season with a top draft pick, and you know
Mm-hmm.
you have your guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That you're. I consider that a complete success of the season
Mm-hmm.
for the Titans.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you there. It's it's weird because it's a rebuilding season that you're labeling as a season trying to compete when you have no shot of competing really.
Yeah.
Unless Callahan wins Coach of the Year,
Hey, who
I
knows?
don't think he
Callahan
will.
might be a genius, and that's
Yeah,
just been held
maybe
back by Zach, right?
could be, or maybe he's even worse than Zach, and
Because
Zach
yeah,
is actually making him look bad. Like we have no idea.
we
It's
have zero clue.
when there's a new head coach like this, who has never been a head coach before, anything can happen. Really, when there's a quarterback situation like the one here, anything can happen. I mean, it's an interesting one. It's an
Mhm.
interesting one. Anyway, that's all for this one. Just go ahead and wrap it up because this is going up on your channel. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. We put a lot of work into these videos. We have a couple more videos that we hopefully will be recording later today. And yeah, we just hope that you guys keep enjoying the series. If you have any suggestions about what you'd like to see in the video, feel free to leave it in the comment down below. And feel free to tune in to the next episode, the 27th ranked team, that'll be up on Pat's channel, which will be linked in the description. And thank you, everybody, for watching.